What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today we're going to be going over who can we bring in as an offensive coordinator to replace Mike LaFleur, who just left. But before we get into that, guys, quick reminder, hit the subscribe button. If you're new here and you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, it really helps the channel grow, and I would love to have you guys around. So let me answer the question, why am I wearing a Zach Wilson jersey? Well, because we're going to be talking about offensive coordinators, and whoever's being brought in as an offensive coordinator is going to have the expectation that part of his job is going to be fixing two. And that's a lot harder said than done. There's a lot of problems with Zach Wilson's game right now. But that being said, let's talk about one, kind of the changes that we've seen in the staff for the New York Jets on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, we've let go of offensive line coach John Benton today. A wide receiver coach, Miles Austin, is dealing with the suspension, so he's been let go. And basically, Rob Calabrese has been let go, our quarterbacks coach. He was told, or I think the wording was that we're going to let the new offensive coordinator decide what they're going to do, but any offensive coordinator worth their salt is going to want to bring in their guy at the QB coach position. So Rob Calabrese is gone as well. Some defensive coaches and other coaches were let go too, but we're talking about the offensive side of the ball. Now, there are a lot of names out there, and there are a lot of possible people to be brought on. And I came up with a list of my guys that I would seriously consider as options and who I would be okay with as an offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. So let's start with, I guess, my number one. I want this guy more than anything, and that is ex-Colts head coach Frank Reich. Frank Reich, to me, is the best option available. If we can bring him in, you have to bring him in. Whatever it costs, you bring in Frank Reich. Frank Reich is the only guy out there who is a quarterback whisperer. He was able to turn Nick Foles into a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He was able to cover up a lot of the mistakes and the problems that Carson Wentz had in his game in Philadelphia. But the problem is that Frank Reich is being interviewed for head coaching positions. It's difficult to see Frank Reich coming to the Jets possibly because of that fact that he is getting head coaching offers and getting head coaching interviews. But if you can convince him, if you can entice him, Frank Reich seems to be the answer, because any quarterback worth their salt in free agency is going to want to be coached by Frank Reich. Frank Reich will build an offensive scheme and an offensive playbook that will tailor to your skill set and make you the best version of yourself. And not only will you get the opportunity to throw the ball to the likes of Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and any other wide receivers that we may bring in or that we have on the roster, or be able to hand the ball off to Breece Hall, you're going to be coached by one of the better offensive minds in the NFL right now. And so if he's available and if he's willing to come to the Jets and he says, you know what, I'm willing, you don't let him leave the building, you bring in Frank Reich. And that fulfills that need to bring in someone who's more experienced, who has head coaching experience, and can kind of be the adult in the room on the offense. And that's what I want in my offensive coordinator. My realistic option in the sense of who I think ultimately probably ends up being the New York Jets offensive coordinator is the Rams senior offensive assistant, Greg Olsen. Now, a lot of people have talked about Greg Olsen, and the biggest reason I think that Greg Olsen is probably going to end up being the New York Jets offensive coordinator is I think Derek Carr is going to be coming to the New York Jets. I think that's the plan, and I think I would not be surprised to see the New York Jets even possibly entertain a trade with Las Vegas to get Derek Carr, to make sure that he can't go and hit free agency, and restructuring his deal and then bringing in his offensive coordinator, because Olsen was the Raiders offensive coordinator from 2018 to 2021, by far and away the Derek Carr's best years as a quarterback, and it would just be a way to create the best environment for Derek Carr, but also for our offense to be as good as possible. We have a lot of really, really good weapons, and if we can just fix the offensive line, which I think we will be able to do, Greg Olsen, Derek Carr, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, there's a lot of weapons, and that's a lot of possibility to have a really, really good offense. And so Greg Olsen, I think, is the candidate and the guy I think that's ultimately going to end up here in New York. Now, to give you a couple of other names, we keep hearing the name, the QB coach out of Miami, Darrell Bevell, who spent has 15 years of being a coordinator and has 15 years of experience as a coordinator. He had very familiar with our system, so if he can't come in, the playbook probably wouldn't change that much. The terminology wouldn't change that much, and we would keep a very similar scheme. And that kind of just seems like a lateral move. I'm not the super biggest fan of that. Another name that you keep hearing is obviously Nathaniel Hackett, ex-Denver head coach. I'm not a big fan of that. Another pipe dream would be Gary Kubiak, but I don't think he's coming out of retirement. But in all honesty, the only other name that I look at and I say, you know what? This is a guy that I would want to bring in as an offensive coordinator for the New York Jets would be Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury has been let go or separated with the Arizona Cardinals. I don't see him getting a head coaching job in the NFL, and I think that Cliff Kingsbury wants to be an NFL head coach, not a college head coach. And if he goes back to college, I have a hard time seeing Cliff coming back up to the pros anytime soon. But if he comes to the New York Jets and can bring in a veteran quarterback, win a playoff spot with the New York Jets, fix Zach Wilson possibly, and just get this offense going and moving in the right direction, he can be back on track to be a head coach in a year or two versus going back to college, trying to rebuild a program from the ground up and being a college head coach for anywhere from 5 to 8 years before he even gets a sniff at the NFL again. So those are the guys in my estimation that are probably going to be talked about the most for the offensive coordinator position at the New York Jets. Guys, let me know what you think of my list. Let me know who you think is the best option for offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. And last but not least, go Jets.